First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. This is Fox 12 Now. Thank you for joining us. I'm Greg Nibbler. We are live streaming here in the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom. We are here every weekday from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., and we can cover a lot of different things here, including breaking news. As you probably have heard earlier today, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has come back with a ruling on one of the restraining orders preventing the Trump administration from deploying National Guard troops to the city of Portland, particularly that ICE facility in South Portland. That ruling has been overturned, essentially saying that the Trump administration can send National Guard troops in. However, there is a second restraining order that is still currently in effect, preventing that from happening. There's a lot to sort through here to really understand how these legal issues play out and really what's next after this particular ruling. And so we wanted to get some help to do that. And that's why joining us right now, we have Dr. Chris Shortell from the Portland State University and professor of political science there, and I'm sure a lot more. But Doctor, thank you very much for joining us here to talk about this and to really walk through it. I think to start off for everyone, could you give us just a breakdown of what this ruling really is and what it means?
Sure. So this was a challenge to the district court judge's order that said, no, President Trump has not provided sufficient justification for sending in National Guard troops, either Oregon National Guard troops or National Guard troops from other states. This was an appeal to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals asking for a stay on that order, to basically put it on hold so that troops could be deployed while a trial is being held. So the judge's ruling was just an initial ruling, a temporary restraining order, waiting for a full trial. This is an order from the Ninth Circuit saying that you don't wait until the full trial, the president is allowed to deploy National Guard troops to Portland while we're waiting.
So this is saying he would be able to do that, and that trial that you're referencing, that is already scheduled. If I'm
that
not
is
incorrect.
Scheduled,
and that's for later this month.
Yeah, that's correct. So on a very quick schedule. At the trial court level, they're trying to get a full hearing in and a decision out of that. This is just about the temporary restraining order that the judge initially issued. Basically, she said, hold on, we have to see whether this is going to be okay and whether the state of Oregon or the president are more likely to be successful when it comes time to have the trial. Her evaluation was that the state of Oregon had the better of the argument, at least as it appeared at the time, and therefore they would experience more harm if the president was allowed to deploy these troops. The Ninth Circuit decided differently.
And this ruling from the Ninth Circuit, there were 3 judges as part of this. 2 of them originally appointed by President Trump during his first term, I believe. Another one appointed, I believe, by President Clinton. And
right.
the 2 judges appointed by Trump were the ones in favor of the Trump administration, and the Clinton-appointed judge was against. And so we did hear those arguments, or see those arguments anyway, in the statement that came out today. And talking about that, one of the things that the other judge that was appointed by Clinton asked for was an en banc hearing for this. I am not a legal expert, and that's why we're asking you. Could you explain exactly what that means that she's asking?
Of course. She encouraged the parties to seek en banc review, or to ask the whole Ninth Circuit to review this decision. She can't actually order it, but Oregon has already filed their appeal asking for en banc review. This outcome, by the way, was not a shock. If you watched the oral arguments in the case, it was fairly clear at that time that it was going to be a 2-1 split on the outcomes. I would say it's more surprising that it has taken this long for the ruling to come down. En banc review is asking, it's not going up to the U.S. Supreme Court yet, it's asking all the judges on the Ninth Circuit, or a large subset of the judges, because the Ninth Circuit is so big, to hear the case themselves. And then if they decide that this 3-judge panel got it wrong, if a majority of those judges think they got it wrong, then they can reach a different conclusion.
Now, if that were to occur, how quickly would that happen, since we already do have the trial coming up in a couple of weeks anyway?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say. It depends on the urgency with which the judges on the Ninth Circuit decide to respond. They have the ability to respond fairly quickly. We've seen in other emergency petitions, some, not often, but sometimes see en banc review of those decisions that can happen. It's not going to be immediate. It's not instantaneous. If the Ninth Circuit does decide to grant en banc review, they will automatically put a hold on the Ninth Circuit panel's decision. So basically, we go back to where we were, where the trial court's temporary restraining order, the original one, would still be in effect until that en banc panel could decide.
Is there a timeline for them to decide if they're going to grant that, or it's just completely up to the court?
It's up to them. Yeah, it's up to them. Now, I mean, looming over all of this is what's happening in Illinois. So in Illinois, we had a very similar case at the trial court level. Trial court judge said the president does not have the statutory authority to deploy National Guard troops under these circumstances. And that was appealed up to the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. The three-judge panel in the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals agreed with the trial court judge and said, yeah, this is correct. The president does not have this statutory authority under these circumstances with the evidence that they've provided. That was at the end of last week. The Trump administration has already filed an emergency appeal to that decision up to the U.S. Supreme Court. Briefs on that were due by the end of today. So this U.S. Supreme Court may act before the Ninth Circuit can get to en banc review of this decision. So it's a very rapidly changing situation where we're watching both what's going to happen with the Ninth Circuit as a whole and what's going to happen with the U.S. Supreme Court.
That's a lot of different things in play. But ultimately,
Yes.
if the Supreme Court decides to take this up, that will decide everything else lower.
That's right. So if they decide that in this case out of Illinois that the president does have statutory authority to deploy National Guard troops under these circumstances, then I would say if the Ninth Circuit has not yet announced that they're going to review it en banc, it would be very unlikely that they would, because all the Trump administration would do at that point is just appeal that right back up to the Supreme Court and likely get the same outcome, since they're fairly similar factual patterns. Right? So what's happening on the ground in Chicago, what's happening on the ground in Portland, they're not dramatically different in terms of the justification that the Trump administration provided to the courts.
Gotcha. So that Supreme Court ruling, if it were to go that way, I guess whichever way it goes, that would kind of be the template for Oregon as well.
Yeah, and now, I mean, it's also possible that the Supreme Court will decide not to decide. Right? Mm-hmm. So they don't have to take it up. They can just not decide. Now, they're not deciding means that the Seventh Circuit's ruling stays in effect. Then that would increase the likelihood of the Ninth Circuit hearing this appeal en banc, because now you've got a decision that goes one way in one part of the country and a decision that goes another way in another part of the country. And ideally, you want to avoid that as much as you can so you have consistency under the law.
How does this all play out with that other restraining order that is also there restricting the Trump administration from sending National Guard troops from any state into the city of Portland?
So this is it's an interesting procedural quirk. I don't know that in the long term it's going to have a lot of effect. But when the Trump administration appealed the original order, they did not appeal the second order. So the judge issued one order where she applied it and said the Oregon National Guard cannot be deployed in Portland. And that was the point at which President Trump announced that he was going to deploy National Guard from California and Texas to Oregon. And Oregon went back before the trial court judge and said, this doesn't seem like it's consistent with what you ordered. She was pretty unhappy with the Trump administration's effort to do that. And since she viewed that as trying to get around her original temporary restraining order, she issued a second temporary restraining order that it said no National Guard units from any state, anywhere, can be deployed in Portland until we have this case resolved and decide whether the president actually has this authority. When the Trump administration appealed that first order, they said, we don't think we need to appeal the second order as well, because if the Ninth Circuit agrees with us on the first order, then the second order is also going to be problematic. As a substantive matter, I think that's right. I think if the Ninth Circuit is persuaded that the president has the authority to deploy the Oregon National Guard troops here, then by the same logic, they probably would be okay with the president deploying California and Texas National Guard troops in Oregon. But they didn't actually appeal that order. So Oregon is raising a technical point that this other restraining order is still in place and has not been overturned. That means the Trump administration would need to actually appeal that other order and it'll be the same Ninth Circuit panel that's reviewing it. We are pretty certain we know what that outcome would be, but they would have to go through that process.
So since they have not officially asked for that to be repealed, is there a chance that the judge will just repeal it on their own?
So that is also a possibility. They will probably first ask the judge, hey, the Ninth Circuit made it clear that this isn't okay, so revoke it. I think the hesitation there is going to be, A, the possibility of en banc review by the Ninth Circuit, and B, the Supreme Court potentially acting in the Seventh Circuit case. And my guess is that there'll be sort of a move to wait and see what's happening with those before making a definitive decision.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's your prediction, is that they will wait and keep that second restraining order in effect until they know.
That's my guess, if things move quickly, right? I mean,
a lot of this is guesswork. I totally understand.
Timeline. Yeah, it's left up to the judges on what their timeline is. So we don't know. There's no statutory rule they have to go this quickly or that quickly. So we're sort of at their discretion about how quickly this moves forward.
Gotcha. So a lot of factors still out there. Now, if that, and I'm just broaching this just to see if this is something that could happen. So if that second restraining order is, say the judge comes back later today or tomorrow and is like, okay, well, we're going to take that one off too. Would that then, in the meantime, while we're still deciding on whether the Ninth Circuit will take it up, the trial, Supreme Court, all of that, would that allow the Trump administration to send in those troops in the meantime?
Yes. If the Ninth Circuit did not announce that they were going to hear the en banc appeal, then in the interim, there could be. Now,
there's
if
a window
that would
there.
happen, I think the Ninth Circuit would speed up their announcement of their decision of whether they're going to hear it en banc or not, right? To reduce the uncertainty there. If they really are going to hear it en banc and they agree that they want to hear it that way, they're probably not going to let troops be deployed in Portland for, 12 hours before they can't be deployed, right? So there is some logistical elements to that where if the judge decides, okay, I'm going to lift the second order as well, then the rest of the Ninth Circuit will probably signal whether they're going to hear this issue or not as to whether they're going to hold the status quo.
Gotcha. And if they don't, then that opens up that other window. There's the Supreme Court aspect, there's the trial, there's all that. So it's so many different factors in there. Anything else that you think is important for people to know about this? You've clarified a lot here. And again, for everybody watching too, this is a lot to go through and understand all these different legal aspects. I mean, it is confusing.
Absolutely.
So, and we're trying to get you the best information here, and that's why we've got the doctor on here. So, yeah, anything else that you think is important to understand about this?
I think that the big thing to be watching for is ultimately what's the Supreme Court going to say about this. In all likelihood, we know already the Seventh Circuit case has been appealed to the Supreme Court. Justice Barrett has asked for briefings on it. Because the Supreme Court is already moving on that, that's probably going to ultimately provide the resolution in Oregon related to this case, and it may provide the resolution even in California related to the earlier case there that was decided by the Ninth Circuit, which held that the president didn't have the authority to deploy the National Guard troops in the way that the president had deployed them there.
So really, so a lot of it too is we don't have a timeline on any of this. This is all up to the judges and every circumstance. So that's where this is all sitting right now.
Yeah, and I would say right now it is unlikely that tomorrow there's going to be National Guard troops in Portland. I think because of all of these uncertainties, everyone knows it's worth just waiting, right? It may be 2 hours later that you get an answer and an order, so everybody's kind of waiting to see what the outcome is.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your knowledge of this and breaking this down a little bit here for everybody to really understand. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what it is. We're waiting on judges in so many different circumstances to find out what happens next. But I really appreciate it. And if we get any changes, I hope we can reach out to you as well just to find out some more.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us here on Fox 12 Now.
Absolutely.
And for everybody watching, again, this is Fox 12 Now. We live stream here. We get to do these longer form segments, and we get to kind of break down some of these very dense issues and things that are going on, and to get a little bit more clarification on what this all means. So feel free to watch back and share this. If you have questions, send them in, and we'll see if we can get those answered as well. We'll have more coming up on our 4 p.m. news. Our investigative team has been going over and over and over all of these documents that were released, so they're going to have a lot more analysis on that coming up, and we'll have that at kptv.com too. So starting on our 4 p.m. news, which will be live streaming wherever you're watching me, if you're watching me on our apps anyway, which I recommend that, our apps are our website, you'll get some more clarification on some of those things too, as far as what's in all of that. But thanks for joining. That's it for right now.